Welcome to Marc My Words, a show that searches for the fork in the road in life, the place where the turning point in the journey of entrepreneurship and life can be found. Let's meet each other at the crossroads on Marc My Words. This episode is sponsored by GrowX Labs. Quick question. When you're leading a team or growing a business, who helps you think clearly? GrowX Labs offers executive decision support, real-time access to a trusted strategist who helps you navigate tough calls, leadership blind spots, and everything in between. No fluff, no long-term commitment, just fast, honest insight from someone who gets it. If you're a founder or exec and need a sounding board, go to growxlabs.com/Marc. That's grwxlabs.com/Marc and book a discovery call today. When I prepared for this episode with Jon Ferrara, who is the CEO of Nimble, I caught myself there were a couple of key words. Obviously, Jon is considered a pioneer when it comes to the world of CRM, and he's been involved in technology and computers for a long time. So I'm really excited to talk to Jon just for that reason. But between CRM and being a pioneer, I couldn't help but to at least pull up a couple of definitions before we really launch into this. And I'm going to try not to be too profound here, because it's just a entrepreneurial podcast after all. It's not history class or school or anything like that. But a pioneer is considered someone who is among the first to explore, settle, or develop a new area or field, often facing challenges and hardships. And I mean, we're hopefully not talking about Daniel Boone or Amelia Earhart or anything like that here, but I do know that Jon has been involved with technology and has grown with the online and computer and tech world in a different way than I have, because I'm assuming that I'm a few years younger here. But for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with CRM, customer relationship management, from my perspective, I feel like this is something that whether we're a customer or we're on the other side, we know more about it than we might think. And I'll certainly let Jon speak for that. But CRM, customer relationship management, in case you're not familiar, refers to the strategies, practices, and technologies businesses use to manage and analyze customer interactions and data throughout the customer life cycle. And this is something that I feel like we all know something about, but could also learn a lot more about. And before I finally give Jon a chance to say hello, I will just say, going off of Nimble's website, that Nimble helps you nurture relationships, accelerate engagement, and turn connections into lasting business growth, which we could all use, especially those of us in the entrepreneurial world. Jon Ferrara, welcome to Marc My Words. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Mark. That was a really fantastic intro. Thank you so much.
You know, I put a lot of thought into these intros, and this one just felt so comfortable. Sometimes I get a little anxiety, which I completely put on myself. But today I was like, boom, this is gold. I'm totally knocking this out. So I appreciate that. Welcome to Mark My Words. I'm Mark Schmidt, by the way, and we're going to talk a little bit about CRM. We're going to talk about John's path in entrepreneurship and much more. So let me, first of all, I'm intrigued just from the fact that John studied computer science during a time when it was really still like computers and computer science was in a very I don't even know if I want to say infancy, but I guess at this point you could almost say that. What made you interested in studying computer science back in a time when probably a lot of people weren't thinking about it?
Well, Mark, first, let me just start by saying thank you for inviting me to this conversation. I really believe that we're on this planet to grow, and the best way to grow is by helping other people grow. So hopefully, people listening to this today take away something that blows a little wind in their sails. Um, what got me involved in computer science? Well, I'd have to say one of the biggest things is the space program. I grew up with Gemini, Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, and all the test airplanes and the right stuff, and you know, Chuck Yeager, and all those guys. And I wanted to be an astronaut, like every other kid my age who was born in the '60s. And I my uncle was an entrepreneur. He helped invent radar and microwave at MIT in the 40s and had a waveguide bending business, which is a microwave company that basically builds communication systems. So I was surrounded by technology. And there was one moment my mom took me to New York City for my first time, and I went into the lobby of what is now known as the MetLife building. Back then it was the Pan Am building. And in the lobby on the first floor was a IBM Selectric typewriter, but it's really a terminal. It was a computer because back then they didn't have cathode ray tubes. They were basically paper-based sort of teletype things, and they let you touch it. It was like an exhibit, and I went and sat down at the terminal, and it said hello, and I said hello. And it said, "What's your name?" And I said, "My name is John." And it said, "How you doing, John?" And I said, "Pretty good." And it said, "Well, what do you mean? What's your day been like?" And it was this thing called ELIZA, which was one of the earliest AI programs. And I just found it fascinating that a machine can have a conversation with me, right? Like that was just and things like 2001 Space Odyssey and HAL and all that. So when I was 18 years old, I graduated high school. I had hair down to here. Uh, and I cut my hair off, and that summer I bought an Apple IIe. It cost me $3,500. The funny thing is today a decent computer is about $3,500, but the price differential and what yesterday's money was, I think it was more like 10,000 in today's money. Literally, I was the first kid in my town that had a computer. And I went to the UCLA Computer Club and I hung out with a bunch of geeks and we learned about computers together. And I went and got a computer science degree. I worked my way through my computer science degree at a Computerland store. This is before the PC even came out, right? So the PC came out in 1991, and we're talking about uh, it was 1992, but we're talking about like the early 80s. And actually, no, the first PC came out in 82. And and so I was working in the computer store back then, and it was really that journey of learning it as from a hobbyist perspective, then learning it from working in a computer store perspective, selling computers to individuals and corporations. And then when I graduated, I didn't want to be in sales because my dad had a car dealership and I grew up on a car lot. He had the first Subaru dealership in California. And so I I just wanted to make sure that my microphone wasn't switching. So I said I never want to be in sales. So I got a job at Hughes Space and Com and worked in aerospace for 2 years. And then from there I learned how corporations were implementing computers, and they were just in the process of rolling out 15,000 computers into a site that was Hughes Missile Systems. And so there's 15,000 people there. And so I had to roll out 15,000 computers to desktops, replacing terminals, and tie all those PCs together into minis and mainframes and enable people to have applications and work together. And so I had to select a network operating system and tie all that together. And so I learned the journey of computers from a hobbyist, from a reseller, from a reseller selling to corporations, from a corporation buying and implementing. And that is what really gave me the foundation to be able to, when I had a pain, to be able to synthesize the solution to solve it because of my journey. You have to think about it. Back then, when I was working in the computer store, there were only 300 software programs on the market at the time, and none of them were networkable. They were all single user programs that ran on a Novell network. And so, um, after 2 years in aerospace, I just said I can't stand working in aerospace anymore. And I got a job at a startup network operating system company called Banyan. And it was there they put me into sales. And back then there were no sales tools. This is 1986 and 87. People ran around with something called a day timer. It was a paper-based to do contact list and calendar you kept in your leather base binder that slipped into your jacket. That's back when people wore jackets. And then uh, I did my forecast on a spreadsheet, and I did communication with my team with pink rally out slips and voicemails. And I said, this is so stupid because what I really wanted was to run a wire through all of our day timers so everybody was on one page, not just in my district office in Dallas, but with the people at corporate as well, because I was selling to these large corporations and regional resellers. And it wasn't just me that was touching them. It was my systems engineer, it was my manager, it was my admin, it was people in marketing at corporate, people in admin, people in shipping, people in support. And I wanted to be able to have a tool, contact manager that had every contact, what happened, who did it, what's going to happen, who's going to do it, which is basically email, contact, and calendar, which today is Outlook or Google Workspace. But back then, Outlook didn't exist. And not only did I want a team relationship manager, which is contact management, I wanted sales and market automation features because I was in sales and sales is hard. And I wanted a tool to not just put together a forecast that management could use to determine how much equipment to build for the next quarter, but I wanted a tool that helped to remind me because Mae West said, out of sight is out of mind, and out of mind is out of money, honey. And you need to be able to, when you get a lead or you're prospecting a lead, to be able to outreach to that lead and get them on the phone. And that's not easy. It takes 22 touches before somebody's ready to be able to be contacted in the buying cycle. And most people give up in the first to third touch. And so I wanted to build automation for sales and marketing and everything else. I couldn't find anything like it. And so I quit my job in 1989. I had $5,000 in the bank. I got together with a college buddy of mine he and I took Calc 1, Calc 2, Calc 3, differential equations, linear algebra, numerical analysis together, and both got straight A's through all of it. So he was the smartest guy I knew next to me, and we built something called Goldmine.
So, did you know back then that you were doing things that were really going to be like so influential and a part of the future? Or was your mindset like, I just want to accomplish my goals and I want to progress on my own account? I'm not even thinking about the outside world. Like, what was your thought process during those times of, a more primitive era?
Yeah. So that's a great question, Mark. So there's some nuances I'm not getting into detail with, but basically, when I decided to quit my job and start this company with my co-founder, he wanted to launch a networked accounting program. And so I got together and we did that. And so we were trying to sell accounting to small businesses, networkable, and there weren't networkable accounting programs on the market at the time. And I designed Goldmine for my own need because the best products are created by people who are solving their own problems because they're passionate about and they understand the problem. And so I basically designed the original concept and screens of Goldmine based on my own needs of creating a networkable relationship manager with sales and market automation. And we were continuing to try to sell the accounting program, and we had Goldmine at the back of the booth that we did trade shows, and all the resellers wanted to see what Goldmine was. I mean, it just naturally brought itself to the front. And I'll tell you what, Mark, I never studied accounting. I still struggle to know the difference between a debit and a credit, and I can't read a balance sheet. And so these selling accounting systems to accountants is not as much fun as selling sales software to salespeople. And so we basically pivoted and begun to sell Goldmine. And so, in answer to your question, I didn't create Goldmine thinking that I would pioneer CRM because CRM wasn't a term. Back then, we kind of invented the word team contact management or work group contact management or contact management for a team with sales and marketing automation features. So we just called it contact management because Salesforce automation, email marketing, and customer relationship management were not terms until the early 90s.
Yeah, well, when you say email in early 90s, I mean, I was basically the only people I was emailing were people, I had Prodigy, if anybody
Yeah,
remembers Prodigy. I was emailing people who had the Prodigy service, and
yeah,
that's what email was back then. It was just amazing that anybody could go from point A and point B to connect through text. Now it's
right.
like, you know, it's just a
And
part of everyday life.
And you have to remember there was no Outlook back then. We were Outlook. We basically were Outlook for tens of millions of people. And so the heart of CRM is contact management because CRM evolved from contact managers like Goldmine and a competitor that we had back then called Act. And so the reason why people loved Goldmine was it was designed for the customer facing business team member, not for management. And so we launched Goldmine, we began to scale it, and we were Outlook, and then we were Salesforce before Outlook or Salesforce existed. And then Microsoft came out with Outlook and they kind of began to dominate the low end of the market, contact management. And we shifted up into CRM and we basically trademarked automated processes, which was actions based on triggers, which is basically the root of email marketing and web lead, web form capture. So we could capture leads from your website, put them on a drip track and automate the nurture processing. And that was really the early days of contact management, Salesforce automation, which is automating the sales process, pipeline and automations, email marketing, and CRM. But what happened was um, Salesforce came out because, well, really it was Siebel first, which was like on-prem solution, and then Salesforce in the cloud. But CRMs like that were created for management because management was afraid of what all the salespeople were doing with their databases, and they wanted to command and control it and report on those people. But they forgot to build the relationship management stuff into the CRM because at that time Outlook was there, and that's where salespeople lived. And they basically went to the CRM once a month before the reports were run to feed it, so they wouldn't get in trouble with management. And that's one of the biggest causes of failure of CRM is lack of use. And the second is bad data because the data just decays because the sales reps are just typing in crap. And so I think CRM has lost its way. It started out for the customer facing business team members. And I'm saying that term because CRM isn't just for salespeople, it's for everybody in the company because everybody in the company touches the customer along the life cycle, pre-sales, post-sales of the engagement. And it's not just prospects and customers that your company connects to in order for it to grow. At Nimble, we connect to editors, analysts, bloggers, influencers, third-party developers, investors, advisors, biz dev people. And all these people are touched by everybody in the company. So when you think about CRM, don't think about prospects and customers or sales. Think about the entire constituency around your business and how are you managing those conversations and engagements. And I'll tell you how people are managing it: spreadsheets. Because there's 225 million global businesses, less than 1% of them use any CRM. Most people's CRM is a spreadsheet because most people are not in sales. Less than 5% of every company are in sales. Everybody else is not in sales, and CRMs are designed for salespeople. And so the only outcome of a CRM is a deal that's dollar denominated, but most relationship outcomes are not dollar denominated. I'm trying to hire you. I'm trying to get you invested in me. I'm trying to get a job from you. I'm trying to do a biz dev relationship with you. I'm trying to get you to talk about me through PR. And so there's a lot of reasons why people want to use a team relationship manager, which is the heart of CRM. I think CRM today stands for customer reporting management because it's really a command and control tool. And that's why people hate their CRM. The reason they call it Salesforce, you have to force salespeople to use it.
Fair enough. Well, you have evolved through the pretty much the entire life of CRM. You've had, two other businesses in addition to the first one. And I'd just be curious, started thinking about this as you were talking. You've been so involved in building all this up. But when you step back or you're just living life as a customer, whether it was back really in the trenches during the more primitive era or even today, do you ever step back as the actual customer and come up with new ideas or and does anything ever strike you just from that perspective?
Well, absolutely. So I sold Goldmine in 1999, the year Salesforce was started, and I retired and raised three babies. And I'll tell you, Mark, I learned more about relationships in my soul as being a stay-at-home dad than I did in the 40 years previous as an entrepreneur and working. But it also gave me time once I'd gotten all my kids into school to be able to take time to do other things. And one of the things I did is I remodeled my old Spanish home. And in those 3 years, it really tuned my product management brain back up to really honed it. And right about that time, Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn were coming out. And I started to use those platforms. And you have to remember, I'd been out of tech for 10 years. I disappeared because when you're a dad, you're not networking and trying to connect with people. I'm changing diapers and walking kids to school and reading in the classroom and those kind of things. So when I started to use those systems, I began to reconnect with old friends and new ones, and I found it very powerful. I saw how social media was going to change the way we work, play, buy, and sell and communicate. And I started looking for a relationship manager that connected to social because I was making connections in Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Crunchbase, AngelList, whatever. And they were all contacts in those separate systems. But I wanted to consolidate in my own contact manager and be able to manage it, to be able to do things with it, because you really can't do things in those other platforms. They're not designed for relationship management. And I saw that there were no social CRMs. And then I started looking at contact management in general. And I saw that contact management was broken. So contact management should be a team contact platform that has history, who did it, pending, who's going to do it, and the ability to share notes and contacts and tasks related to those people. And back then, Outlook was still on-prem with Exchange, and it wasn't really a great contact manager. And Google email, Gmail, and email and calendar were three separate apps that weren't connected. So if you go to a contact record, you can't see what happened, who did it, what's going to happen, who's going to do it, let alone have a shared contact database because every team member with Google and even with Microsoft 365 today has a separate contact database. So the email productivity suites that we rely on today to run our businesses don't do what Goldmine did 30 years ago, which is a team contact platform with shared history, pending, notes, tasks, etc. And so I saw the opportunity to reimagine CRM. And then I started looking at CRM. And I saw that CRM wasn't about relationship management. It was about command and control and reporting. And people hated to use it. And so I said, I could blend all this. I could take the roots of Goldmine, which is conduct management for the team, blend that with this modern view of being nimble in your social relationships by integrating Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and all the other platforms into Nimble so that Nimble could automatically synchronize in all your contacts, all the signals, all the posts, everything that's going on so that you could dance through your life in LinkedIn and Twitter. I even convinced the LinkedIn management to give me their public and private APIs, and I built Sales Navigator before it ever existed, and pioneered social selling and social CRM. So I continued innovating even after Goldmine.
So, what was it like going from being an entrepreneur back in, completely different era and then jumping in to a new era as far as like running a business? What were some differences? Was there anything that you were like, wow, I can like do this now. I can be more remote now. I mean, considering what you were doing, I can't even really guess whether you were remote back in the 80s and 90s or not. You can certainly tell that story, but that must have been quite like eye-opening and different, just taking that time off and going back into entrepreneurship, and you suddenly probably have a lot more tools at your disposal.
I think one of the biggest things in building Nimble versus Goldmine was that everything was cloud-based or moving towards cloud-based at the time. We started Nimble about 10 years after Salesforce started, so things were cloud-based. Um, and the other thing that was really different was social media and influencers. So in building Goldmine, the way we grew it out of the apartment is we tried to do little advertisements and sell to end users and work through computer stores, but it just was a slog. And one of the things that I learned at my previous job at Banyan is if you can identify the influence of your prospect and build a pay it forward relationship with them, then they would recommend your product, and that's how you scale. And so I identified that small businesses, in order to do their technology, had to hire a reseller to implement their PCs and connect them to servers. Back then, Novell was the network operating system of choice for small businesses. There was no NT server back then or cloud. So what I did is I cold called every Novell reseller in the country and I got them to use Goldmine because people sell what they know and they know what they use. And then that's how we basically got ourselves out of that apartment into a building and went from no sales to like $100,000 a month in revenue. And um, so the point of that, I know there's a point. Um, So the point of that is at Goldmine, we use the Novell resellers as a way to spread our word and build our users and base. So fast forward to Nimble, there weren't as many resellers, technology resellers. People were fine try buying in the Google Apps marketplace and implementing kind of themselves, but they did listen to influencers in social sales and marketing. So what I did is I began to swim in the social river, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and begin to listen for people who were sharing content and building communities of a higher vibration. People like Vivica von Rosen and other people like that. You probably know Viv from LinkedIn. If you don't, I'm happy to introduce you. She'd be a great interview. But these are the people who are influencing others who want to become better, smarter, faster at social sales and marketing, which was the foundation of the promise of our product. So if you can get the influencers of the promise of your product, of their services, or in our case, it was social sales and marketing, to use Nimble and then start recommending and reselling it, That's how we basically built our first 100,000 customers is by leveraging influencers, guerrilla PR, and social media content sharing.
So you came into all of this with Nimble when social media was really taking off. And I know the last decade was particularly big for social media. Even the decade before, pretty big for it. Now we're in, at least from my perspective, we're in an era where everybody's used to it, and there might be people who are getting a little like turned off by it for a number of reasons. What's your perspective on the significance of social media today? And do you see anything else going on that could take its place or at least become like another player in the world of CRM?
You bet. Great question. So when technology becomes ubiquitous, it disappears. Remember when the internet first came out, when it was always on, when we switched from 300 baud modems to DSL to fiber? And so in the early days of the internet, all these companies was eToys and eye contact, E and I this, right? And there was an internet boom. And then now we don't really think about the internet in the same way that when we go to the bathroom or the kitchen and we turn on the hot water, we don't think about all the equipment that's in our basement that's heating the water and recirculating the pipes and filtering the water and doing all that. We just turn the water on and we expect it to run. So social media went through a phase where everything was social marketing and social sales and social CRM. And now we're just back to sales and marketing and CRM. And so social has not disappeared. It's just become ubiquitous. And I think what has taken its place is AI. So AI driven sales and marketing is the future, but with some caveats. The more digital we get, the more human we need to be. And I really do believe that AI will not replace humans as much as augment them. I think that's the best possible scenario because everybody feels icky when it doesn't feel right, right? It doesn't feel real. And that's why I think the more digital we get, the more human we need to be. And that humanness will help you stand out.
I'm really glad that you said all of that, especially with your expertise and your history, because we've had a lot of conversations on this show in 2025 about AI, and the people that I've had on this show have said a lot of really positive things. I know there's a lot of people out there who are fearing AI and they think AI is going to take every single job known to man away, and we're going to be living in this weird utopia, dystopia, where everybody's going to be bored and not have a job or whatever. I'm getting a little off track with that, but I think it's really important for people to understand that AI, while it can do some really good things, it's not going to like completely replace humans. And I know that partly because when I do for a living, when I'm not doing Mark My Words, I basically do like quality control on it used to be on television shows, now it's on like ads and stuff like that. And I can tell you firsthand without really talking about who I work for or what I do, which I don't want to really do that, but I can say that what I do for a living, you could assume, and I hate using the word assume, but you could assume that it would be easy for technology to do all that work, but it's not even close to being there. It's really great what it can do, and I think it does a better job at doing some things than others, but I can tell you just based on what I do for a living, that we're not there yet. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think we're there yet, but I do think that anybody listening to this today should know what AI is and how to use it, which AI platforms are best for what, or find tools like Nimble that have integrated AI into it to make you better, smarter, faster. I'll give you an example. So we have a thing called Nimble Prospector. And what Nimble Prospector does, it plugs into your browser because we all live in our browsers. And so Nimble will automatically build your contact database, your CRM, from the contacts that you have everywhere they are. Microsoft, Google, Apple, those are contacts, email, calendar. Synchronize that together and then enrich them with people and company data so you don't have to Google them, you Nimble them. Synchronize in your LinkedIn, your QuickBooks, whatever, and then let you work with those contacts where you live. I live in my inbox. I live in LinkedIn. I live in a lot of places. I don't live in my CRM. And so your CRM should work for you by building itself and then work with you wherever you work. That's Nimble Prospector. And we've added AI to Nimble Prospector. So if I'm sitting on LinkedIn record and I want to add that to Nimble, I could hit a button and Nimble automatically build a record from that person and their company data. And then based off of what your intent is, based off who you are, what your company is, what products and services you sell, and what your intent is at the moment, it will tell you a score on that person. It will tell you how best to connect with them and then give you the words and the pathway to do it. So it might be a LinkedIn message. It might be a LinkedIn invite. It might be a series of emails. It might be a series of manual tasks combined with messaging because you shouldn't message somebody you shouldn't message somebody blindly. You should message them maybe after you walked in the digital footprint and added value to the conversation, commenting on their stuff, sharing their stuff, etc. And if you do these things properly, they may reach out to you before you ever reach out to them. But the whole process of staying connected, nurturing relationships, it's hard. And that's what machines are really great for, is to help you to be more human, to stay more connected, but to do it in a way that's structured and helps you do it better, smarter, faster. So Nimble will take who you are, what your business is about, what products and services you sell, who that person is, what business they're in, and what your intent is. I'm reaching out to sell, I'm reaching out to do biz dev, I'm reaching out to do PR, I'm reaching out to get them to invest in me, I'm reaching out to hire the person, whatever it is. Nimble can then make that easy because it'll build the sequences and scripts and things necessary to make it really simple for you to dance like Fred Astaire with your relationships.
I love all of that. I love that example of how you're utilizing it. And I can give you a real quick, just kind of a bounce back from my perspective. So I've actually tried using just ChatGPT to help me with this show a little bit. And
Hmm.
because I have had so many conversations about AI, and I honestly came into this year not using it, not really even thinking about it too much. So I kind of put it on myself to learn more. And I started, if you're somebody who is fearing it, uh, just ask it questions about like silly things. Like I've been doing like just really silly stuff with it, saying, create like a situation where this show and that show, like these characters meet, and it'll like create like a whole new world and a whole new thing that you never would have even imagined. And that has nothing to do with Mark My Words, but that's kind of how I got started, just on a really like silly basic level. And then I ventured into asking it to create like Like I just recently added a sponsor to the show, but I didn't have time to create um like audio, like music for it. So I asked it to create some music and it did that. And I didn't really like what it gave me, but it at least kind of like gave me an opportunity to apply um that to what I'm doing, and it made me see, on top of like some other things I've been trying to just ask it with the show, to just do better. Like I want to keep it as human and authentic, obviously, as possible. So I'm not looking to turn this into Mark My AI. I'm not going to let AI like start doing the interviews and all that. But I am at least like having a relationship with it where I'm like, okay, I like that idea. I like that thing that you're giving me. Or conversely, okay, I don't like that. And I'm not going to use that, but I'll keep it going and keep working it out. So it's not like gonna be completely perfect. You still have to be a human being and you still have to use your brain and your intelligence and
Yeah.
be involved.
I agree. I think that people shouldn't fear new things, just like people didn't fear the fax or the cell phone or the internet or computers or cars. Like you need to embrace new technologies and leverage them as you go. And that's what we're trying to do at Nimble is to infuse AI across all the relationship management and the sales and marketing features that we have. So you're better, smarter, faster, and you don't necessarily have to write scripts and chat GPT to try to do these things. When I first created Goldmine, people were building their contact managers out of like DBase. So they're trying to roll their own. And it's a lot of work to do all that. And so if you're listening to this today and you are still managing your contacts in Google Contacts and LinkedIn, you need to fix that because no matter what you use at work, you might have a CRM at work, but you're not going to work there the rest of your life. Most people only work places 3 to 5 years at best, and people get hired based off their brand and their network. Your network is your net worth. And so you should have a personal CRM that manages all your key contacts and be putting them in there all the time and then staying in touch with people. It takes 60% of the fuel of a car or a rocket to get up to speed, but very little to keep at speed. And so I like in relationships that guy with the pencils and the plates on the sticks. It takes a lot of work to get there, but just a little nudge now and then to keep it going. And that's what Nimble does. It tracks your interactions and then suggests when you should reach out to people and then facilitates those outreaches to make them easy. So you don't have to draft all those emails, etc to make those connections. And ultimately, just having the nudge on your shoulder. So when you open up an email on Microsoft or Google, that Nimble sitting there, Nimble Prospector, and it tells you if that person exists in Nimble. When was the last time you spoke? What did you talk about? And what were your to-dos, etc. Or if you read an email and you're supposed to do something, you could schedule that task in Nimble and not have to basically wait to go to your CRM to do it. And that's why people will use CRM more is because they don't have to work for it and they don't have to go to it to use it.
So if I'm somebody, and I almost said if I was like in my 20s or 30s, I suppose you don't have to be quite that young, but if I was somebody who had a passion for CRM and I wanted to go like take the same path or journey and create a business similar to yours, not to give you competition, but if I wanted to do that today, what would be like your advice to anybody who wanted to do that?
Well, Mark, let's pretend it's not them having a passion in CRM because that really limits it. Let's say that there's somebody And it doesn't have to be a young person, it could be an old
Yep.
person. There's somebody out there with a passion and they have a dream to create it. So I call that the three P's of life. Figure out what your passion is, build a plan to achieve it, make that plan your purpose on a daily basis. Most people don't have a passion. And if they do have a passion, they don't build a plan of how to achieve it. And if they do build a plan, they don't take that plan and put it on their refrigerator or their mirror and look at it every day and say, what am I doing today to get there tomorrow? And if you do that, you're going to get someplace and it's going to be amazing. May not be exactly where you thought you're going to get, but you're going to get someplace and you're going to change your life. And I came up with this sort of philosophy after reading a book called Think and Grow Rich. So it's a book by Napoleon Hill. It's not very big. It was written in the 30s. And it has been very powerful in my life in helping me to transform my passions into reality.
That you could really expand on those three P's. I think that's a wonderful way to look at it because as you spelled all that stuff out, I checked each box on my end. I'm like, well, I guess I really am living my passion. And one thing that I want to tie into that, that I was hoping to get into before we wrap up, is branding is obviously something that is really important to you. And you've built a couple of really good brands, really good names, especially. I've told you before we started, I wish I would have actually come up with the name for this show. I did not, but I did take advantage of the idea. But what's your advice on branding and coming up with like a brand and just utilizing that and making that like who and what you are and how it represents you.
Well, there's a couple books I've read, and I'm sure there's better ones out these days. One was called Positioning, and the other one was called The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. And I think Reese and Trout wrote Positioning, and they might have read the marketing book as well. But a couple things that I remember from that is when you're coming up with the ideas and the words that you're trying to create to position yourself or to tell your story, try to come up with words and ideas that are already in people's heads because it's a lot easier to connect an idea that somebody already holds dear and then expand on that than it is to try to put a whole new idea into their head. And and I think that you have to be like the Rolling Stones when they first wrote a song. So there's a song I like by them called Angie. Um, and I imagine that when Mick Jagger or Keith Richard first came up with the idea of Angie, it might have been a few notes. Dun, 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 dun. And maybe Keith Richards is sort of like playing that in his home or wherever. And he starts playing with it, and then Mick hears it, and then Mick kind of goes, Angie, you're beautiful. And they're just doing that in their like home now. And then they take that to a club and they play it, an early rendition. And then the crowd either goes, wow, or they do nothing, right? And so when you're developing an idea, you should take that idea and connect with influencers in and around the promise of your products and services and start telling the story. And then as they lean in and react to you, those things that they do that with, the things that vibrate with others, then you basically lift those up. And the things that don't quite work, you shift that out. And eventually, by the time you're really ready to launch, you've gotten incredible feedback and you've honed it. And now you're playing stadiums, right? And it's just, you're killing it because you basically polished that story, the product. And so when you build your product market fit and you're building your story that you're going to tell, you've got to dance with others and be as sensitive and aware to what's working and what's not working and continue to polish, not just in your branding, but also in your products and services as well. That's how you really build a gold mine.
I totally agree with you, and I can relate that to how I kind of like build up Mark My Words because first it's like, okay, you have an idea for a show and you have kind of like a concept. So where do you go from there? And I'm not going to completely spell everything out, but you need like the equipment, you need somewhere to actually upload the episodes, you need guests, you need all these things. And that is basically how you can just build up your business. It can look like it's all magic when it's out there and it's an actual product, but there's like humble beginnings to not only a business or even a song that was a great way to kind of like spell all that out because I don't know where I'm going with this now, but I just moved. I usually have vinyl behind me. So since I know the Rolling Stones, I love them, and I know that song, I was able to just really kind of play all that in my head, which I'll probably have that song in my head now, and I'll be like,
And
where did that come from?
and do you notice what I did, Mark? Is
Yeah,
I tell human stories to relate to n non-human activities, right? And
right.
so when I whip out like the five F's of life, okay? So the five F's of life are these are the commonalities that connect us and help us stay connected beyond the business stuff. And I think that building relationships with the people that you work with and around is critically important to your life success. So people connect on the commonalities. Do you see my walls? Do you see the books I read, the
Yep,
degree, the records and all that?
yep.
These are all the commonalities that we share with one another. And I used to teach this to salespeople. When you go in somebody's office, look at their walls, look at the books they read, the degree of the school they went to, the knickknacks they collect. All these things are the commonalities that you can share with them in order to figure out what you have in common and then build the intimacy and trust to get them to open up to you about the business issues, which is a professional you can then solve. The five F's are family, food, fun, fellowship, and frolicking. So,
Oh,
so I try to come up with acronyms and stories of like how to connect. And I have another one for you, networking. So when you want to network with other people, you don't walk in a room and go, "Hey, anybody want to buy some CRM?" So
no, I don't.
no, but when you walk in a room, you kind of like it's like a so being in connecting digitally is like walking into a cocktail bar. You don't just walk up to somebody and start shouting at them. You look at the groups and you identify a group that you might want to connect with, and then you go to stand adjacent to that group and you listen to the conversation, and then you find a moment to add value, a comment on something in an intelligent way, and then wait. Eventually somebody's going to look over to you and say, Mark, wow, you seem to know a lot about podcasts and storytelling. What do you do? And that's your moment to have a conversation. And then all of a sudden you're part of that group. And when new people come in, they see that you're part of the influencer group of podcasting because you've connected with the other influencers. And that's basically how you build your brand and your network by treating it like a cocktail function, right? And so I love to tell analogies and stories and acronyms in order to get ideas across.
Well, you certainly got a lot of ideas across today, and I wish we had another hour to talk about stories and analogies and more on CRM, but we are going to wrap this up. I'm going to give you an opportunity to tell us how we can find you and how we can work with you and anything else you want to add.
Well, it's easy. Google me and then pick a channel that's good for you because I'm in all the channels. But really, Google yourself. Do you show up on the first page? Are you happy with the way you show up? If not, you can fix that by building your brand and growing your network the way I just shared. And that's the 5 E's of life: educate, enchant, engage, embrace, to empower others. So what that means is by building identity in all the places where your constituency hangs out, give your knowledge away on a daily basis with the intent to grow others. When people comment, connect with them and connect with people not to sell them things, but to help them grow. Because Zig Ziglar said, the more people you help grow, the more you will grow. And to make it really simple, my email is jon@nimble.com. Reach out to me. Tell me how I can help you grow. And if for some reason you go to nimble.com and try it out and you like what you see and you want to become a subscriber, use the code John40 and you'll get 40% off your first 3 months of using Nimble.
You know, first of all, thank you for all of that. Secondly, you said something interesting there. I, for whatever reason, did Google myself the other day, and there was a time when I was way before Mark My Words, when I Googled myself, this guy, his name was Christian Mark Schmidt. He would always pop up. I'm like, who is this Christian Mark Schmidt? I don't even know what the heck this guy did or what he was known for, but I don't even see this person come up when I Google myself now. And if you Google yourself, like just off of Safari, which is what I'm doing right now, um, when you get that like AI overview part of it, it actually does bring me up. I don't think that I'm even like manipulating it too much from, and I don't want to spend like 20 extra minutes on this, when we can wrap this up in a nice
Well,
tiny bow here.
I do want to add that one of the best ways that you could help yourself show up in search and AI is build a Wikipedia page on yourself. It's free and it's easy. Just follow the rules and do it on your company as well, because then you'll really show up.
Okay, it's not even me. It was Mark My Words that I think is what I looked up because I looked it up here and it did actually like talk about my show. Now, none of the people that I brought up as guests have ever been a guest on this show, which again kind of goes back to AI. It's good, but it's definitely not there. It's not perfect. But I just thought it was worth mentioning that I just, for whatever reason, I don't even remember why, but I did.
Yeah.
And it actually came up with results for me, which I don't know if that's like really amazing or if that's scary or if that's humbling. I don't know, but it is. And it happened.
Well, that's great. Congratulations, Mark.
Well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you, John. Thanks again for being on Mark My Words. We could easily go another hour, but I know you have rice that you need to stir. So,
Black pearl rice. It's the
black,
best.
black pearl rice. Well, let's end on that note. Jon Ferrara, thanks again for being on Mark My Words. I am your host, as always, Mark Schmidt, and I will see you soon with a new episode.
Thank
Bye.
you, Mark.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to go on a journey with me into entrepreneurship and life on Mark My Words. If you would like to learn more about me and the show, you can find me on LinkedIn at Mark Schmidt or connect with me on Instagram at Nimrod79. Video episodes of Mark My Words, as well as other content, can also be found on the Mark My Words YouTube page. Entrepreneurship can be quite the roller coaster ride. It can be a bit isolating and intimidating, but it doesn't have to be that way. Let's meet here next time at the crossroads on another episode of Mark My Words.